Well, hello and welcome to Wild Vittles. So, this isn't my kitchen. I'm out by the grill again. It's summertime. Actually, I'm recording this on Father's Day. Take this moment to thank actually both my parents. My dad and my mom are a huge part of the success of my life. And so I want to thank them on this day. Didn't get a chance to say that on Mother's Day. So love you, Mom. Love you, Dad. Today's episode, I'll dedicate to them, is Flounder. And so you can see here I've got a flounder that I've descaled. And I'm going to start working on this while I'm talking about it. I've descaled this flounder. It's flounder that I caught in the Freeport area. There's a bug. And I've already descaled it and cleaned it, removed kind of the gut pocket, and I'm going to get started. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut kind of a horizontal scoring pattern down to the ribs. And we'll talk a little bit more about the fish in just a minute, but I want to get it kind of going so that it's cooking while we're talking. And I'm scoring it so that it will cook more evenly. And it gives us an opportunity to introduce some flavor down into the meat, because while flounder meat is probably the least fishy, it doesn't have a distinctive strong flavor. And so it could benefit from a little bit, and it can be dry. So I've scored it now with my handy dandy fillet knife, and I'm going to put some butter, because butter makes everything better. I'm going to put some butter in every crack and crevice. And my butter's been sitting out here while I've been getting all my production equipment ready. So it's a little soft, which is not bad. And I have my grill heated. It's a little too hot, actually. It's heated up to about 440. It needs to be about 350. And I'm going to put some seasoning on this. Use whatever kind of is your choice. And there's not a whole lot else. Now, that looks pretty ugly right now. I will be the first to admit. But I'm telling you, it's going to be fine. Probably just I'm going to put this off to the side. So now that we've got it buttered, we're going to put seasoning on it. You can use any kind of seasoning. I'm going to use my Old Faithful, which is the Cowboy Kent Rollins. And you want to put it on pretty liberally, because this is kind of a flavor to itself, right? And it's going to crisp up the skin. All right, and I'm probably going to put some butter even underneath, just from a perspective of I want that bottom not to stick. Now I am emulating a recipe that's used by the Outdoor Texan. Outdoor Indoor Texan. I got that backwards, which he told me. I highly recommend, and I'll include a link in the show notes to his site. Okay, so we're going to cut over to the grill, and we're going to get this on the grill. Okay, now I've got my fish on the grill. You can see here I've got it kind of in a boat of aluminum foil. I'm doing that for a couple of reasons. One, I want it kind of to be bathed in butter. And the other one is I'm trying to shield it from the direct heat, because my fire's a little too hot and I can't seem to get it cooled down. Ideally, this would be about 325 to 350 degrees, and mine's currently, I think, at probably 450. And so that may mean for quicker cooking time, which is not all bad. All right, so we've got the fish on. I'm going to also do some squash and zucchini. My wife actually cut that up for me. And what I'll show you here, lovely mix of squash and zucchini. I poured a little bit of olive oil in there, just, I didn't measure it, just kind of whatever looked right. And then I poured some of my seasoning in there as a mix, and I've tossed that around. And when enough time has passed, I need to set my stopwatch so I know how much time has elapsed. I'm going to take that and put this on a disposable wire rack, and that'll go in the grill. that's probably only going to take, I don't know, 10 minutes maybe. Depends how you like your vegetables. So I was going to let that go, and we can sit here and talk about flounder in the meantime while we're waiting that, because I'm trying to do this in a one take wonder. So, and one other thing that I've got here that I highly recommend is a meat thermometer. In this case, a fish thermometer. It's for both, because you want to get to the fish to about 145 degrees. They've got parasites and things like that, right? So anyway, a little bit about flounder fish while this is cooking. If I remember to do so, I'll shoot up a grip and grin, although it's just really me showing the flounder that I caught actually yesterday. Flounder are a fantastic fish to fish for when I go kayak fishing off the coast, the Texas coast, and it's the inland shore. It's not from the beach out. It's really behind the barrier islands in the bayous. And the key to this, and I've mentioned it before when talking about red fishing, is really going out when the tide is moving. But for whatever reason, it seems like in the morning when the sun's just coming up and everything's waking up, there always seems to be activity associated with when the sun's coming up. So I try to be on the water by the time the sun's coming up, if not before. And I fish with artificial lures, and I like to I'll use a bait caster because I'm in Texas. Also use an open face spin cast rod, 12 to 14 pound line, and I'll use a jig head on there. I'm fond of bass assassins, which is really ironic because bass are in fresh water, but it's saltwater bass assassin, I think, and it's a jig head, and it's like an 1/8 ounce, and I often will use like a Gulp soft-bodied plastic, and that's impregnated with smell, and that is especially beneficial for flounder for whatever reason. Flounder are like little sea monsters, tiny little mean, greedy sea monsters. And why do I say that? So I will often have one on the line, and I've seen them. They first of all, let me talk to you about where you find them. Probably anywhere from 6 inches to 3 to 4 feet of water. They like to be along grass lines, and especially where water is flowing over them and it's pushing bait, because they wait in ambush. And they're flatfish. They're in the sole family or fluke family, I think, and so they lay flat on the bottom. Both eyes are on one side, and they're looking up, waiting for something to come by, and they reach up and grab it. You want to kind of jig your lure over them or a slow retrieve. And I've used paddle tail, shrimp bodies, these Gulp shrimp, or even curly tail jigs. And there are a lot of people that like to use a double rig with two the curly grubs or a second hook, because they'll come often behind and grab the back side of it. But no joke, I'll have a flounder that will grab my lure, and he'll grab it in a manner that he is not hooked. The hook is probably sticking out and away from him, but he's grabbed on it so tight and wants it so bad. When I go to set the hook, he just is like, you're not getting it from me, and I'm going to take it. And you're like fighting him all the way up to the kayak. And then he sees the kayak, he realizes what's going on, and he spits it out, pooh, and gives you the finger as he's like, swimming away. Not literally, because he doesn't have fingers, but what I mean by that is flounder break a lot of fishermen's hearts. They're heartbreak. And so, pro tip, if you are fishing for flounder, you better damn well have a net. And when you're pulling him up to the boat and trying to get him in, you better have your net in the water, keep him low, and do not let his head get out of the water until you get him scooped up. I've seen lots of people lose flounder at the boat. Really infuriating. But it is what it is, right? So, flounder are extremely good to eat. They're a very neutral, mild-tasting fish. I'll often skin them and fillet them, and then I'll do a preparation on the grill with foil, a little bit of butter or oil, and some seasoning. And you can either eat that fillet kind of whole, or you can shred it up and put it in tacos, quesadillas. It has a lot of versatility. So I think, it's probably one of my favorites. You can fry it. Actually, Hank Shaw has a fried flounder recipe that I tried, and it looked just like it when I got done. I was really pleased with the end result. Yeah, it's a great fish. Texas, we have a limit. Obviously, the minimum size is 15 inch. This is a nice 16-inch fish. You can only keep 3. I think that's right. And there's no maximum on the size, but that's not generally a problem because you don't generally get huge ones, right? And then there is actually a season now. We have a closed season at a certain point in time. Check your regulations because I'm probably wrong, but I want to say it's December. The month of December, I don't remember if it runs into January, and that's to protect the flounder as they are doing their migrations. Because they're kind of vulnerable at that point. In the fall going into winter, they migrate through the channels, out of the bayous, into the Gulf, and they're going out there to reproduce. And in that transition, people often can target them and would be able to catch quite a few because they're concentrated in places, right? But there's been a decline over the years of the flounder population. And they're not really sure why. It could be water temperature. I think, like all things, you have to have the right conditions for when they spawn and for them to hatch and for them to grow. So it's a concerted effort by, the wildlife department to be able to make sure that they're preserving the resource and that we're not taking too much. So for that, I thank them. So I would highly recommend I'd highly recommend flounder fishing. If you go out, you can do it on bait, but I really do think just like a gulp shrimp, you can get these things in a package of, I don't know if it's 6, 8, or 10 or something like that, a jig head, and put that on, wet a line, and go find yourself kind of a pinch point or where there's a channel where water's moving through, or even a grass edge where, like this one, there was a wind blowing the water towards the grass edge. Well, that's blowing bait, shrimp and small bait fish into this, and flounder are waiting there. And I think the key probably to catching flounder is a slow retrieve. I have a friend, Joel, who I think is a flounder expert, but I don't think he means to do that, but he has a very slow retrieve, and he always catches more flounder than I do. And I think that's the key. He's an excellent fisherman, don't get me wrong, and he came up to speed like in the span of just a few years. But I've always told him for redfish, I'm like, man, you need to be cranking a little bit faster. And I don't think he listened to me on that because he's catching plenty of fish, but his flounder catch rate is much better than mine, I think. I've also, from the Salty Yak, Kerry Beeson, he's got a secret that he's kind of let out of the bag too, of putting like a second hook behind the first hook, and which I've never tried that, but it's probably a really good idea. And it's really exciting when you get a flounder, especially a big one. Trying to make sure you get that thing in, because like you might think, well, what's the difference between a 16, 17, or a 20? They get exponentially wider and thicker for every inch that you add on to them. So they're a pretty cool fish. I would also recommend, if you're not familiar with saltwater fishing, you need some fish grabbers, like the grab in the lip. Bogas are an expensive version. They have cheaper versions of that. I have a knockoff boga. And the reason is saltwater fish have teeth, and especially flounder have very aggressive teeth. So you do not want to reach your hand in his mouth and lip him like you would a largemouth bass. You need to have something to grab him with, and a measuring stick, or now a lot of the saltwater poles have measurements on them, and you can utilize that as well. So it's been probably about 10 minutes, and I'm going to take a look at our fish and see how it's going. So it's looking pretty dang good. You can see bathed in butter. It would make most cardiologists probably cringe. Lots of seasoning, crisping up well, but it's not done, because you can still see that fish is translucent in there. But it's coming along. And when I think we're about halfway, I'll probably do it at about maybe 15 minutes in. I'll put the vegetables on the other side of that grill there. So while we're waiting for that to get to a halfway point, I am going to put on, like I said, my summer vegetables here. And then to round out our dish, we've got some watermelon. Nothing better than a Summer watermelon, cut it up, put it in the refrigerator nice and cold. Do you put salt on your watermelon? I thought that was crazy first time I heard it, but it's actually pretty good. Also, cardiologist probably not very happy with me for saying that, but it's one of those things that, salt makes some of these things better. So, what is life without a little bit of salt? So, like I said, I'm put a little seasoning on here, but this is really a pretty simple dish. I get these disposable trays from my grocery store in the grilling section to do vegetables, and it's mainly so you can pick it up, like buy the whole tray, and you don't lose your vegetables through your grill grate, which would be sad. I probably need to spray that thing with Pam before I put that in there, but these are covered with oil, so they should be fine. We'll live life dangerously and not spray it with Pam. So, I haven't counted it up, but I think I'm about 6 months in to Wild Vittles from a perspective of, doing it. I have been updating and doing uploads of both a podcast from an audio perspective and a YouTube channel every week since the end of December, and we're coming up on, we're in the middle of June, so maybe I'm not quite there. But I haven't missed a beat, haven't missed a single upload. I'm coming it close tonight because tomorrow is supposed to be the upload, so I'm going to do this episode if I can get it edited correctly in time, and there's not too much ambient noise. This will be the day after Father's Day. And I'm kind of reflecting. I had really good growth of uploads on both YouTube and audio up into this point, and kind of got a dip in May, which I'm kind of blaming on, people's schedules change, right? Their kids aren't in school anymore. They're having some vacation. Things are changing a little bit. So is it me? I don't know, because I don't know whether or not this long form cooking is really what people are looking for. I do have some interviews coming up. I'm extremely excited. I got in touch with Becca Garris. She is an Instagram personality, but what I would say is probably one of the purest from a perspective of doing it for the love of the game, because she's not traveling to, far-reaching places. She's a traditional bow hunter that hunts essentially in her home area with her daughters, and I think it's pretty incredible. She does a lot of cooking, and that's why I want to have her on. So we're kind of doing Instagram direct message phone tag to get something set up, but hopefully that's going to come pretty quick. Also been talking to a friend of mine, James, who was on the episode where we talked about bobcat pot pie, and he's hosting a lot of wild game dinners, and I want to talk to him about hosting a wild game dinner. How do you put that on, and what were the challenges he found? Because it's something I would like to try, and I think that people, as they're experimenting and becoming better wild game cooks, that you might want to try. So I think that's something that we ought to talk about as well. If you have any suggestions, I would really appreciate it if you message me on my Instagram. You could also do it on YouTube. On the YouTube comments, do not count on me getting back to you right away, because I don't check the YouTube comments very often. I'm trying to limit my media time. I'm trying to be a creator and not a ultimate consumer of so many things. So those are my plans for going forward. I am kind of reevaluating whether or not this is successful from a perspective of the format, and I'll be revamping it. And let's see here. We're about 16 minutes in. Let's take another look at that fish. That's looking pretty good. It looks like it's alive with the bubbling of the butter underneath. I think we're getting close enough that I can probably get the vegetables put on there. Hopefully I got enough room. All right, so we're ready to get the vegetables on. I've got this cookie sheet just to kind of control some of the drippage, because these are got olive oil in them. We'll probably get a bit of a flare up at the point that we put these on the grill, but that's okay. Hopefully my stuff doesn't blow away. All right, I'm gonna spread those out. It looks like we got good coverage from a perspective of the oil, and the seasoning is light, like we want it. We don't want it to overpower this. I don't want to touch it because it's, man, you get that oil on you, it's going to be hard to get off because I'm not going into the house to wash my hands. I always think it's funny when you watch somebody cook on TV. I'm always watching, so did they wash their hands? Are they getting cross-contamination? So I do wash my hands. The fish, I guess I did touch the fish and then put it on. But I don't worry about, I don't know that fish carry like terrible, things like salmonella or E. coli. I suppose they could, but I don't really worry about that. So I just wipe my hands off and go. All right, we've got this spread out really well. So I'm going to take, not the cookie sheet, I'm going to move the cookie sheet over, but I'm going to lift out this tray and put that on to the surface in the grill. So let's take a look. All right, got the vegetables put in here. And we'll give that the miracle of time. We're at about 20 minutes now. So I'm hoping that in 20 minutes that'll be done. So I hope you guys are doing a little bit of summer cooking. It seems like life never slows down, and I'm always wanting to do a lot of these cooks, but they take time. Something that's on my list while we're waiting for this to finish up, deer ribs. I've done them successfully. I've done them poorly. I'm probably going to try to do one of those in an upcoming episode. If you have any requests, if you'd like, I'd really like you to try X recipe, especially if it's grilling right now, because the summertime, I'd like to grill because I don't like to heat up the house. So it's something that I want to do. This time of year kind of lends itself to it, although I get quite hot, being out by the fire. But this one hadn't been too bad because we got a breeze, as you can probably hear. And to give you kind of a preview of things to come, so I have quite a few hunts that are planned for the fall, and hopefully that will yield some great dishes if I'm successful. The one that I'm actually preparing for right now today was I was sighting in a long-range muzzleloader. So I was fortunate enough to get a Utah muzzleloader pronghorn tag. And that was a big shock because it was a low-odds draw for that. And I've had a muzzleloader that I purchased a couple years ago. I shoot muzzleloaders a lot, but this is a specific type of muzzleloader that's built for like longer range. And pronghorn kind of lend himself to longer range. Utah also changed the rule last year that you can't use a scope. So I got to use open sights. So I picked up a CVA Paramount Pro a few years back, and it's been sitting idle until now. And I've got it's a Colorado edition. And what that means is they installed, they actually didn't install it. They sent the rifle with the peep sight in a package, and I had to install it. But it's a Williams peep sight. So it's got a round peep at the back that you look through a small hole, an aperture. And on the front, they call it a globe. It's kind of a cylinder, and inside that cylinder are crosshairs. And you're able to look through that, and with a fine aiming point at your target at long distance. And there's a lot. I have another muzzleloader that's quite good at 50 yards. It's got like a fiber optic front sight, but that fiber optic front sight, if you put it on something at 100 yards, it covers up the whole damn target, and you really don't have much precision. So the peep sight lends itself to have more precision. So today I actually went to a 100-yard range. Their maximum was 100 yards, and actually sighted the rifle in 400 yards. I was very pleased. At 50 and 100, it shot extremely well. So these are projects every weekend, right? So the next weekend, I'll take it out to the 200-yard range and see how it does at 200 yards. Right now I'm an inch high at 100. Probably need to be a little bit higher than that, but we'll leave it, and we'll see where we are at 200. I think it's going to be 3 or 4 inches low at 200. And if you're shooting at a deer-sized target, in this case it'll be an antelope, you've kind of got a bit of a range of what that vital is probably 8 inches or so, maybe 6 on an antelope. So with rangefinders, you know exactly what the yardage is, and you utilize the practice and knowledge you gain from shooting in advance to be able to make that shot at the critical time. So that will be, I think it's end of September is when that season is for muzzleloader. So we'll see. Hopefully, we could find a pronghorn and make the shot. I really like pronghorn meat. I haven't had any in a few years. I've shot 3 pronghorn in my history, and that is some fantastic meat. There's just not a whole lot on them. They're kind of like small deer. Also got really lucky this year. So I got that Utah tag. I got drawn in New Mexico for a mule deer rifle tag. It's not a great unit. It's an okay unit, but I've never hunted mule deer. I've bow hunted them in Arizona, but this is a rifle tag because that was kind of what I had time available for. So going to be doing that. Need to do some long range practice. And long range for me is like 400 yards tops. I would much rather shoot at 200 to 300 yards for long range, but that's just me. My eyes are getting old. So my percentage of chance of success there is pretty low, I think. I think I'll do well on the pronghorn. The mule deer, maybe not. And then I am going archery elk hunting again this year. I've been archery elk hunting every year for this will be the 7th season, so every year. And not in the same place. I go different places, wherever I can get a tag. This year we're going to Montana. We're going to be in the Bob Marshall Wilderness, and we're being outfitted because it's such a long ways into the Bob Marshall Wilderness. And yeah, it's going to be hopefully awesome. It's not a high density of elk there. There is high density of grizzly bears, so it should be very exciting. It's on horseback going in. So, and Joel, my good friend, we're going together. I kind of blame this trip on Joel because he wanted to go for a bull outfitted, and he wanted to know if I come with him, and so I'm in. I'm more fond of doing DIY. I did my first ever trip I did with a guide because I wanted to make sure that I knew what I was doing, that I didn't get like stranded out there and perish back in some canyon somewhere. But outfitters have their place, right? They're familiar with the area. They got good logistics. They got pack stock. They have a lot to offer. So, not throwing shade on outfitters. They're competent people. So 26 minutes in on the cook. I'm going to take another quick look. So the fish is looking freaking awesome. I'm going to check the temperature on that in a second. The vegetables are okay. They're going to need a little more time. All right. So I just actually brought out some tongs and flipped the vegetables, and they're nearly done. And I checked the temperature with my trusty probe of the fish, and it is done. We're good. It was about 30 minutes. My fire was a little hot, probably 375 to 400, somewhere in there. But it all looks good, and I think we're about done. So what I'm going to do is I've got this cookie sheet. We're going to carefully, without spilling screaming, scorching hot butter, put that into this pan. I'll probably take the fish out first. I'll give you a good look at the fish, and then I'll probably go put that in the house and come back and get the vegetables. They'll probably benefit from a little bit of time as well. All right, so here we have the finished product. A really beautiful, crispy skin, really white, flaky meat. Highly recommend it. Haven't tried it yet, but I have no doubt. Flounder is my favorite fish. This is a delectable meal. Also going to get the vegetables off. They're just finishing up. Let me just put this down here while I finish up. So quick sign off, and just thank you for everybody that listens. If you're listening this, I would really appreciate it if you would subscribe to my audio podcast and give us a review and a 5-star rating. If you're on YouTube, really would appreciate you subscribing and give us a thumbs up. Shoot us a comment. When I say us, it's just me. And I just appreciate you. I'm doing this for fun. This is not a money-making thing. This is kind of exploratory for me. Give me some feedback if you'd like to see something or hear something different. I appreciate you, and I hope you benefit from this so that we can all be better wild game cooks. Good night and good luck.